AD 2000X. A vicious army of robots built by Dr. Wily has overtaken the world. Having a strong sense of justice, Rock volunteered to be converted into a fighting robot. Thus, the super robot Megaman was born. Alright, am I finally here? Am I finally to the point where I'm getting that desperate to avoid Mega Man X7 and redoing the Battle Network games for a little bit longer? Where I'm reaching into the forgotten handheld games that aren't even the DOS games yet? Alright. Hello everyone, and welcome to Let's Play Mega Man for the Game Gear. Gonna be playing on normal mode because I think hard mode only changes damage values and I just can't be asked to give enough of a shit. And similarly to the Mega Man World games, namely Mega Man Worlds 1 through 4, these all look familiar, don't they? We're gonna be starting off with Starman. Yeah, I don't like that at all. The best way to describe Mega Man for the Game Gear is that it's a best of for Mega Man's 4 and 5. Minor gameplay thing off the start. First off, if you get damage while charging your shot, you'll lose the charge. You can only have 2 shots on screen at a time. You do have the slide, you have the charge. It's basically Mega Man 4 onwards Mega Man with a shitload of screen crunch. With that said, in case for some reason this is the first time you're seeing these Robot Masters, I might as well go over their Mega Man and base bios. He's a robot for space exploration. He dreams in the future to go along with a lover to the end of the universe. Good point, he's a romanticist. Bad point, he's delusional. He likes watching opera and he dislikes robots without dreams. And here's one of the worst cases of screen crunch in the game, but here's also a weird thing with the game. If you hold the jump button for a few seconds, Mega Man becomes unable to move. But you can then use the D-pad to move the camera around so you don't need to make blind jumps of faith. I have never seen a game with screen crunch think that far ahead. For as blech as the rest of the game is, that is a surprisingly smart feature and something some of the other Mega Man handheld games on the Game Boy probably could have used in certain cases, I'll be real with you. With that said, Starman stage is your anti-gravity stage for the game. It was basically the water stage for Mega Man 5, if I'm recalling correctly. So you got reduced gravity, you jump higher, but your movement's otherwise unafflicted. Just make sure you're not holding the button too long, otherwise you're gonna jump into spikes. Also notable, the damage ratio for the charge shot in this game is absolutely ridiculous. In most classic Mega Man games, the charge shot does, I think, 3 damage. In this game, it does 4, which means it'll even one-shot most of this game's mini-bosses. It's kind of disgusting. If you're ever towards it having trouble with an enemy, just hold the charge button and, well, hold the shoot button and charge away. You'll probably take it out in one shot. With that said, the stage designs for the main stages aren't too terribly altered from my memory. What can be a little bit altered is the bosses like Starman. They are a lot more aggressive. Starman will be jumping all over the place in the high gravity with his star shield, and he'll shoot it at you at basically any point he likes in his jump and movement. It's surprisingly hard to avoid just due to the screen crunch and how little warning time you have that it's coming. With that said, Starman's what I like to call the hard man of the game, in that as long as he's low to the ground, you can just mash the Mega Buster and take out more HP with him standing still after shooting his shield out than he does to you by shooting his shield at you. He's easily the easiest boss in the game just because of this in my eyes, so he's the perfect first pick, I feel. Plus, I get to talk about the screen crunch right off the bat and just how bad it really is. Ugh. We don't even get a victory jingle. For beating him, we get... I can't even remember what this is called in Mega Man 5 itself, but in this game, every weapon's called something weapon. So this is the crash weapon. It's a shield. You generate around you, and I think after it takes one shot, it's gone. It's not very useful. Honestly, You never need to use the special weapons outside of boss fights in this game, I feel, just due to how little damage they do in comparison to the Mega Buster. I guess Brightman's can be useful as a screen nuke, but otherwise nothing really of worth. Alright, Brightman. With a light of 10 million watts, he can paralyze enemies' functions with the flash stopper he is equipped with. Good point, he's an idea man. Bad point, he's a bit of a chatterbox. He likes inventions, but he dislikes neon lights. Again, like, the fact that that feature's there at all is incredible. With that said, you do want to be a bit careful with dying in this game, for reasons we'll get into in a few moments. Though thankfully, I feel compared to other Mega Man games, the life drop rate in this game's exceptionally high. I think I end this game with over 10 extra lives, which makes it a bit alien to begin with, because not many Mega Man games go above 9. Maybe 10 if it's a game where for some reason 0 counts, which I don't recall there being any of. Actually, wait, no, I think they almost all do. Yeah, they almost all do. So yeah, 10's usually the max. Rush Coil in this game is based off the Mega Man 5 incarnation, by the way, where you jump onto Rush, and then you need to jump off his jumping animation in order to actually get the height you need. Also, a very minor annoyance about this game's pause screen is that every time you enter it, all of your weapon energy powers up, and that just wastes like a second here, a second there, but it's very annoying. There is nothing original in this game, by the way. I should note that. I believe every boss fight, every stage in this game is ripped right out of another game. Even the Mega Man World games, while their bosses were usually ripped out of one of the mainline games, usually 2 games at a time, like with this game, their stages were completely original, and the end games of each game were entirely original. Hell, they even had the Mega Man killers there to help accentuate the uniqueness. This game has nothing for it outside of some very awkward screen compression, hit and miss musical mixes. Every song in this game is ripped out of a mainline game, but it's not always the stage theme you'd expect. For instance, the game over theme, even though you barely hear any of it, is Wave Man's theme from Mega Man 5, but when we get to a certain stage later on, they use Gravity Man's theme for some reason. Speaking of game overs, could have been an annoying thing about getting a game over in this game in the case you miss a jump and you run out of lives. You get the game over screen, pretty standard, but you don't get a continue option. If you die and get a game over, you're back to the title screen. Thankfully, the passwords in this game are pretty simple, so there's at least that. But in the case you're in the Wily Castle later on, that means you have to start all the way from Wily 1 and then backtrack to like Wily 3 or whatever you died. And that's pretty annoying. It is the only Mega Man game I can think of that does this. I think even the DOS games do a continue screen. Keyword there. Notable. Brightman stage, though, mechanic is pretty much intact in the main game. There's 2 particular enemies, a Firefly and that weird fireworks guy. If you take them out, the lights will either be put out or put back on, respectively, and there's some platforms that rotate back and forth. Nothing too special. Either way, it's time for Brightman, so get on your crash weapon and just run into him with it. Brightman will jump all over the place pretty frequently. And when he's not just endlessly jumping into you like that, he'll stop time and make a barrage of shots at you. And I think there's technically a glitch in the game where Brightman can become entirely invincible. Yeah. If you slide into him at the beginning of the battle, as he uses Flash Stopper, he becomes completely invincible, which, don't let that happen. With that said, it's time for our next Robot Master. It's time for Napalm Man of Mega Man 5. A robot whose whole body is a weapon, he protects a weapons factory. Although he built a weapons museum, nobody showed up to see. Good point, he's loyal to his duties. Bad point, he's a maniac. He likes weapons, arms in general really, and he dislikes safety equipment. Now, one thing I want to bring up is this game's development. We actually don't know too much about it behind the scenes, aside from the fact that Capcom sub-licensed the game to publisher US Gold, who was a major British publisher who did a bunch of ports of games to other consoles. Like they did some of the Golden Axe ports, they did a lot of stuff on the Amiga. Duke Nukem 3D was one of their ports, I believe. I just recommend looking up their article, I think, on Moby Games. You can get a pretty good grasp of what they did from there. But they're not the developers for this game. Freestyle Games is. And outside of maybe some ports for US Gold, they did nothing of their own. They did like Street Fighter 2 to the Amiga, maybe, but that's not entirely certain. This is the only game anyone from Freestyle is directly credited as Freestyle 4. And it's just a bizarre case of what the hell happened. Even the guy who made the Mega Man DOS games, Mega Man 1, Mega Man 3, the robots are attacking, and I think he also did the Mega Man X DOS port, I think. There's at least some history there, and like I think we even have some of the emails regarding the game. We know almost nothing behind the scenes about this game. Even I think on the cutting room floor page, the most this game has is like 2 unused songs, the full loop of the Game Over theme, and maybe some minor unused graphics. This game is a bizarre case of unoriginality and them just trying to get a game onto a system probably so they could at least make some profit off the IP from a relatively, at that point in time, unsuccessful handheld. Because, let's see, when did the Game Gear launch? I think it was in like 89, 90. 1990, April 91. So this was year 1, I believe, for the US Game Gear. And I think this game was developed exclusively for the US, I should note. Discontinued... 97. Wow, 97. Or wait, 2000 here in the States? What the hell? Okay. Interesting. Napalm Man stage, though, is arguably the hardest stage in the game just because of one factor, and that's the amount of traps there are. Be it enemies who will knock you into bottomless pits, spikes, or otherwise high damage enemies. It can be kind of dangerous around here. With that said, it's time for Napalm Man himself, who will be moving all across the screen in a pretty fast motion, but thankfully it doesn't matter where he is, because the bright weapon is a screen nuke, so you'll just damage him anyway. His napalm bombs can do some decent damage and have some good range, just because I think the explosion sprite itself will count as damage if you're not careful, like that. Arguably the most dangerous thing is if you enter with low health and you don't have any E-tanks, which are surprisingly sparse in early game. If you die and you've used your weapon ammunition, you're not going to be able to take him out in one shot because you have exactly as many uses of bright weapon as he does HP. So be careful. And now I get bomb weapon, which is probably the most useless weapon in the game. Mind you, every weapon from this point on is the most useless weapon in the game, I feel. As you fire it out, it bounces off the floor a couple times and then it explodes, and it does some decent damage, especially against Stoneman. But you just never need to use it. Every special weapon in this game is useless, I feel. Partially because of the weapons they chose to adapt, admittedly. But also because the charged Mega Buster just does so much damage you never need to consider using anything else. And don't get me wrong, every Mega Man game has those not-so-useful special weapons, but it's like they chose almost deliberately those weapons to be in this game. With that said, Stoneman... His Power Stone weapon strikes enemies with rotating rocks. He's on very good terms with Gutsman. Good point, he's strong-willed. Bad point, he's also very stubborn. Likes walks with an oil drink, and dislikes stingy fellows. I don't know why, Stoneman's always got stuck out of the Mega Man 5 cast to me, I don't know why. But that said, this is easily one of the best stages in the game to get items because there's a lot of extra lives. There's quite a couple of E-tanks here. I think you can even find the M-tank in this stage. If it's not here, it's in an alternate path in Brightman stage I didn't take because you may have noticed there was one point where there was a ladder going down I ignored. That leads to a bunch of the semicircle platforms that I just did not feel like messing with to get, I think, an E-tank or an M-tank. Not worth it. Despite the fact that the game overs in this game are like Mario Bros. 1 game overs, I just didn't feel like going for 100% in that regard. I wouldn't say this is outright the worst Mega Man game in existence, because admittedly, in terms of the platforming and the run and gun, it functions. Which is more than I can technically say about either of the DOS games. Arguably X6 and 7 And depending on who you talk to Battle Network 4, though I think that game's fine, it's just very rushed. But it's definitely one of the lower ones. I'm not even mentioning the 2 Wonder Swan games, because, well, I'll be getting to those eventually. Especially because I found fan translations for both. Oh, boy. Hey, there's the M-Tank. It was this stage. Actually, it might be in both. If it is in both, you might be able to hold 2 M-Tanks, which just doesn't feel right. So I'm assuming the one in the Brightman stage was an E-Tank. Something that's also really odd about this game is, graphically speaking, all the enemy sprites border on being Megaman the Wily Wars level of extra detail added, just without the proportion changes because screen crunch. But the backgrounds feel more like they just chose more appropriate colors because they feel identical to the 8-bit incarnations of each. This game's existence is bizarre. In fact, I don't think I learned about this game until maybe mid-high school. And I don't think it's ever been ported to any virtual console. Of course, I'll probably correct myself on that by the end of next part, so don't worry if I get that wrong. I'll correct myself on it. It's so rare to find information about this game that I couldn't even find the manual online, except in Portuguese, I think? Which I can't speak, so whoops. Though we do at least have box art for the game, as well as, I think, some beta box art from like a Sega magazine circa 1991, somewhere in that range. Also, in a very odd moment of forward thinking, this might also be one of the first games to ever make the charge sound effect fade out after a few seconds. Something that a lot of the fan games would then echo because the charge sound gets really annoying really quickly. Though knowing this game, it's probably less completely intended and more other sound effects taking up that sound channel and therefore overwriting it. Or just minor bugging causing it to not loop properly. Either way, it's time for Stoneman, so get the napalm bomb out. I'm sorry, the bomb weapon. Stoneman's annoying because he'll be jumping all over the place, and with his size, it's really hard to avoid him. Whenever he lands, you get shooken up for a few seconds, I believe. But every 3 jumps, he becomes just a pile of stone on the floor where he's completely invincible. But sometimes it's not every 3 jumps. Honestly, the biggest problem with this fight is his speed increase versus Mega Man 5, because he is ridiculously fast. Partner this with the napalm bomb's frequent bouncing, and hitting him with his weakness isn't the easiest thing in the world. With that said, for beating him like Mega Man 5, we get the Power Stone, which is useless. You send 4 pieces of stone rotating outwards from you at an increasing angle for Mega Man. With that said, we're never going to use it for reasons we'll get into next part. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 2, we're heading into the Wily Castle. There's not even any transitions. We're just immediately there after this fade to black. See you guys then.